Hey there. Can you, so who do we have here so far? Let's see. Oksana and Natalia. How's it going? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Well, welcome. How was your week?
Tough. Very tough.
Really? Yeah. First week kind of thing? That kind of thing? Just difficult starting the year after the summer?
It is always difficult to start.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I have a meeting with parents tomorrow morning, which is always interesting because it always depends on who comes. Are they more excited about things? Do they have questions that even they don't know what they want to hear? So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting for sure. Welcome, Yelena. Who the questions came from this week. So here's what I'm thinking. So are you guys more likely to say something or chat? Because either one's fine with me. I have basically 3 questions from Yelena that I'm ready to cover, and I can talk about pretty much anything. If anything came up in your week, anything like that, if you have questions about how I deal with things, we'll talk about it. That's how it'll work. This is a free form kind of thing, and I'm open to any questions, any sorts of challenges, because that's what's interesting about the job to me. If there's anything that is particularly difficult, just let me know, and we'll work it out. So I'll just get started with Yelena's question. Let's do it. So Yelena, I broke it down to 3 different things. We've got classroom management. Number 1, mixed levels, mixed abilities. And then features that I use in class, like different kind of cool little traditions that I use in class. And if anything comes up during the course of this conversation, just let me know. So let's start with classroom management. Well, first of all, what kind of difficulties can there be when it comes to classroom management? Any ideas? Are we talking more about discipline, relationships? Any thoughts? Because when I think about it, it's mostly forming a good relationship that will lead to better discipline in the future. So classroom management, from my perspective, is all about giving the teacher tools that the teacher needs to adapt and get the students to do what you want them to do as effectively as possible. That's really it. So how can we establish a fruitful relationship between students and the teacher? Well, what do we have to think about? Well, first of all, age, definitely. Age. Age is a big deal, and also the level. Because establishing a relationship with students who are very high level, you have some more opportunities and more ability to connect with them, maybe through stories and things like that over time. With lower level students, you have to do it in a different way. So we have age, level, and the relationship that you have as a result of that sort of background. We need to build a fruitful relationship. So as I see it, I have 3 different areas. First of all, we have to establish expectations. Establish expectations for the class in every area. This is at the beginning of the year, and what you say is okay in the beginning of the year sets a standard for the rest of the year. When it comes to expectations, that can have to do with rules, that can have to do with finishing work, how they behave in class. It's really everything. I mean, you set the boundaries. And that's with anything, really. So I had this parent talk to me This was probably 5, 6 years ago, and I'm just being friendly to this guy. And he says, "Hey, what?" It comes out that he likes to run. He likes to run, and I say, "Oh, no way! I have family members who like to run too. I'm just being friendly, making small talk." And then he says, "Oh, guess what? On Sundays, my daughters and I go to the park, and I run while they ride their bikes. Do you want to come?" I said, in my head, I'm thinking, "No, absolutely not. That's not what I want to do on my Sunday. It's a nice, but no, definitely not." So I said, "Oh, you know what? I don't have a bike." And guess what he said? "I have an extra, don't worry." And it's one of those things where my attempt to say no by just hinting to him that no, it's not okay with me, it didn't work. We have to be very firm with boundaries at times. I've worked with female teachers who have had male students talk to them in a way that they didn't like. So like, kind of, "Hey, let's go out on Friday," kind of thing. Feel free to set that boundary. That's what I always tell my teachers. Set that boundary at the beginning. And that goes with absolutely everything. Because if you allow something to happen, that means it's okay. So if you have a rule, for example, don't talk while the teacher's talking, but a student constantly gets away with that sort of rule breaking, then it's not fair when you get angry. That's not fair. Are you serious? Like, I saw one class where we had this student who's very good. He's still with us. He's a senior this year in high school. And every time he spoke out of turn, the teacher got angry at him. And he was really upset about it. And he said, he just like closed down in class. And he said, "This is stupid," that kind of thing. And the teacher talked to me after the lesson. She said, "I don't know why this is happening." And, well, what's the reason? Because every other student in the class was speaking out of turn, and he's the only one who got in trouble. Now, why did he get in trouble? Because he was the best in the class. He was the best in the class, and as a result, the teacher wanted to give other people the opportunity to speak. So in the attempt to give other people the opportunity to speak, she was establishing a sort of injustice, an unfairness in the classroom. And her expectations didn't mean much because she didn't follow through on them. It was inconsistent. So we need expectations at the beginning. That can have to do with discipline. That can have to do with working together. And establishing these expectations should still take place within the context of age. So I don't know, maybe you can write in chat if you feel like it. What do you think is, so what kind of expectations are you going to set for kids versus teens? How will those expectations differ? Any ideas? I got chat up right here.
I'm sorry, Tom, can we talk or should we use the chat?
You can do either one. Either one. You can talk, and if you start talking over each other, we'll just take turns. That's fine. We'll experiment, whatever works best.
Okay.
So any thoughts? So we got kids versus teens in terms of expectations. Well,
I'm sorry, can I repeat the question, please?
So if we're talking about establishing expectations, so this is when we talk about classroom management, beginning of the year, I want to establish, I'll write in chat too, so you have it. Establish expectations. So how is it going to be different, your expectations with kids versus teens versus adults, for example? What's going to be the difference?
Well, You mean how you're gonna behave? What's gonna be different in your behavior, or what?
What do you expect from your students differing upon, like, it could be rules, for example. Let's say what sort of expectations do you have in rule following or homework completion when it comes to kids versus teens?
Well, for example, there are expectations that if you have kind of something kind of award or a competition, it can work for kids, but for teens, all these things like stickers, a dodge or anything, no, definitely not.
Exactly. Nice.
That's is that what you mean, or?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So what I like to do in teaching is start with something that is a general idea that is applicable to a lot of different situations. So with kids, I can establish an expectation. So in my school at English Connection, we use power teaching or certain aspects of power teaching, which I highly recommend you looking into. And what it does is provide a sort of game framework for the lesson so that kids know if they're good, they get a smiley point. If they're bad, they get a frowny point. If they get a certain number of smiley points, they can play a game. There are these sorts of expectations based on clear rules. And we tend to have 5, and it's up to the teacher's discretion.
Mm-hmm.
So those rules would include things like stay in your seat, ask to leave if they want to do that, no phones, no rushing, and the final one, make them happy. This is the best rule because it's all rules at once. Make your teacher happy means that if I'm unhappy with anything you do, that's against the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a framework for the lesson that establishes expectations. It establishes a system of rewards and reasons for getting those rewards and a sort of game that you can use throughout the year, and that allows you to easily manage a classroom of kids. So have any of you looked into power teaching?
Yes.
It's really interesting. It's
Yeah,
really interesting. I find it interesting to adapt to the ESL classroom.
but you
Because
definitely need to train. You definitely need some practice, even as a teacher. So.
Oh, definitely. Yes, definitely. And it's one of those things you have to come in with confidence. You can't just come into the first lesson and say, okay, let's try this. You come in strong and you establish the expectations in terms of discipline in that way. So we have discipline for kids. What about for teens? What do you think? How are you going to establish expectations in terms of discipline for teens? What's the difference?
Well, the difference, I think, first of all, that thing, what you mean about power teaching, it's not going to work with them.
I tend to agree with you. The guy who invented power teaching, Chris Biffle, or whole brain teaching, they call it too. He uses it with everybody, absolutely everybody. I hesitate in doing that, and for the same reasons you're talking about. Teens don't want to be treated like kids. They don't want to be treated like kids, and if you treat them like kids, that can cause them to close up more or feel disrespected.
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Sure. Teens don't want to be treated like kids. They don't want to be treated like kids, and they can be very sensitive to the idea that they are being treated like kids. So that's why I have had teachers experiment with power teaching with teens, so at English Connection, with mixed results. But we tend to set expectations with teens on a different level. So here's my idea. I'll throw it out there. with teens, it has to be based largely on respect. So when it comes to teens, it's a respect sort of game. It's, yeah, you know what? I'll respect you, you respect me, and if you can build that sort of relationship over time, then it's going to be easier to manage the teens. Now, that needs to be something that you should say openly, I would argue. So you don't want to just say, hey guys, please try to be good, things like that. You know, be clear about your expectations of them. Like, I expect you to do your work. I expect you to do your work. I want to have a good time. We're here for English, and that's what we're going to work on. But I still want to have a good time, and I want to give you the chance to grow. Just little things like that. So establishing those expectations for your teens is the beginning of establishing a fruitful relationship. And then as you start to build that relationship with your teens, you'll start to remember things about them. And this is what I suggest to my teachers. When it comes to managing a classroom team, stereotype yourself and stereotype your teens. Stereotype everybody. And by that, I mean, just choose an aspect of yourself that you are willing to open up about on some sort of level. For example, I took over a group for a little while of teens that were very difficult for this teacher. And they wouldn't say a word, just complete silence. Complete silence. They just kind of sat there, you know, arms folded, kind of slouched in their chairs, not saying anything. They could do basic fill-in-the-blank activities, but they wouldn't speak, they wouldn't respond. How can you develop a relationship that will lead to them responding?
You should be open yourself. You should start with yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But they will feel, if you feel uncomfortable, or if you are going to be closed, they will feel it because they feel, because they're people, they're not stupid, and that's why you should be honest with them. You should show them, but you don't have to show them everything. You just have to choose something to show and to be
So you broke up a little bit on my end. At the end, you have to choose something, I think you said. And I agree completely. And it's just a matter of choosing. So with this group that I'm talking about now, I had a music video that I liked when I was a kid. And I just said, hey guys, check this out. Turn on the music video, we watch it for 3 minutes. And it's like, yeah, I stayed up every single night to wait for the top 9 songs of the day at 9:09 on 1029 The Buzz was the radio station. And I wanted to listen to this song. I loved this song when I was a kid. I'm probably like 14. And then just move on. And those little sorts of things where I open up a tiny bit. Now don't worry about it, Yelena, no problem. Yeah, and you'll see the recording too. So the strategy there is to open up a little bit about yourself, and over time they'll start to open up more about themselves, and you just remember it. So if, for example, we have a student who likes emo music, and in lessons it's just a joke that that's the thing she loves more than anything else, and she can't stop listening to emo music all the time. And it's just a little bit of a joke. It's taking one aspect of her enjoyment and creating some sort of dialogue around it. And that's it. So you can just ask her, hey, Sasha, how was the emo concert last weekend? No, you didn't? There was no concert? Oh, okay, shoot. Just little things like that will allow you to build a relationship that is more open, and you'll build the respect from your teens. Now, respect isn't friendship, particularly when it comes to teens. I understand that some teachers are more popular than others. I've seen teachers do a good job with classes just because the students love them. The students love them, and it's just no matter how great or poorly the lesson goes, it doesn't matter because the students are happy. The teacher told good stories and everything like that. And that's it. That's all that matters. I don't find that to be all the time effective because it relies so much on the entertainment from the side of the teacher. And if the teacher can actually form a sort of bond with students, and that's not always doable. It's not always doable. So when I talk about building a relationship with students, we get to number 2. You establish these high expectations of your students, and then you build a relationship of authority. Now, here's what I mean by authority. I don't mean that you're the dictator of the classroom and everything you say goes. When we talk about expectations, like it has to be fair and within a framework of what is reasonable in the eyes of your students. With kids, you can get away with more because you're the adult. You're the adult and they will accept much of what you do just because you're the adult. With teens, less so. You have to think about setting expectations that will be reasonable in your students' eyes, but still make those expectations high so they have something to work towards. They should be clear and they should be high. Now, when we talk about authority, what I'm talking about is this. Authority is the trust that others have in you to deliver results. I'll just type that out for you. That is authority. The trust that others have in you to deliver results consistently. This comes from leadership theory. And I apologize, I can find the book if you want. Just write later and we'll find it for you. I think it's Heifetz was the author, but I might be confusing 2 different books. His question is, what is a leader? What is a leader? Why do people follow some and abandon others? You look at a place and you're like, why are they following this crazy person? Like, what is going on here? And well, there's a revolution going on. Why? What happened? And what he did was create this idea of authority where if someone has respect of the people and this trust that if we follow this person, things will be okay, then there's no revolution. That is who people follow. And it doesn't matter if it's a country or if it's a huge business or a family or a classroom. Here's how I think about it. If someone insults me, if someone says something bad about me, and I don't respect the person, that person has no authority in my eyes, it doesn't mean anything to me. It does not mean anything to me. If I respect that person, if that person has authority in my eyes, it hurts. And that is what gives you control over your classroom. What you say has to have meaning to your students. Now, not just meaning in, oh, they understand what I mean, but the words you say, your feedback, everything has to have value in the eyes of your students. So building a relationship means building a relationship that will allow the students to respect you more over time. Because over the year, you're going to ask the students to do things that they don't want to do, that they're uncomfortable doing, that they just, who wants to practice exam writing for half an hour? Nobody? Actually, I asked that question last year, and once I said, who loves taking exams? As if expecting that no one would. Kid raised his hands. I do. Now, I have a reason for why, I have a thought for why that is too, if you're interested at the end. Let's make a note. But the thing there is that you're going to have to ask students to do things that they're not particularly excited about. especially when we're focused on growth in the classroom. If we could just play games all day long and they would learn and just absorb everything, that would be great. That would be great. If we could just play games and they'd get really good at the yay within a month, amazing. But it's really not that way. I don't see that happening. We have to put them in a situation where they're unhappy to do something and they will only follow you if you have authority. Now, how do you build authority then? Well, number one, you establish expectations and you follow through on those expectations. So if I say, do your homework or else something bad will happen, for example, I mean, not something horrible, but you know what I'm talking about. Do your homework or else, there needs to be a consequence to not doing your homework. If I say, don't do your homework or whatever, then it doesn't mean anything and I lose authority in my students' eyes. If my student asks me a question and I say, hey, you know what? Great question. I'm not ready to answer it now. I'll bring it back next time. And I forget, my authority drops. If I remember, I maintain or my authority grows. If I tell my students to do something and I say, you know what? This is worth it. If you do this in 1 week, you'll be able to speak using this stuff. Just trust me. They trust me, they do what I say, and they do it, and they feel that growth, they're ready to follow me more. A relationship of authority is necessary to be able to manage any classroom. I had a situation probably about 5-6 years ago. This is actually 1 year before the other story I told with that teen group. We had a group that came to me. It was adults. And they said, hey, you know what? If you don't change teachers, we're going to leave. I said, okay, hold on, guys. Let's figure this out. Let me figure out what's going on. I'll talk with the teacher. I'll work with the teacher. You give me 2 weeks. You give me 2 weeks, and we're going to turn this thing around. So I sat down with the teacher. We talked about it. We planned every single thing she was going to do during the lesson, every single activity, how she could transition between activities to make a great lesson. She had a good plan going in. She practiced it. And then after the lesson, the students come and they say, you know what, change teachers or else we're leaving. They gave me 2 days, not even close to 2 weeks. And that to me was so bizarre. It was strange to see because this teacher, she was very likable in the teacher's room. She had great stories, smart. And I was like, what happened? What happened? Well, I saw a different one of her group lessons. And what I noticed was when she wasn't sure, she mumbled. When they asked a question, she kind of talked like this. Her voice got quieter. She seemed less secure in herself. How she stood, she didn't seem confident. And over time, those little bits of her body language and how she responded to questions, the authority that she had in the students' eyes, it went down, it went down, and it went down. And when they came to me, it was past the point of no return. Past the point of no return. Once you go below this critical line, that's revolution time. You can't turn it around. So I want my teachers that I work with to be very conscious of authority so that they're ready to manage any classroom. But authority depends on the people you're working with. It depends on the people you're working with. Don't come into a classroom full of business people the same way, let's say like business owners, the same way you would come into a classroom full of IT people. It's completely different, completely different. Same with kids, same with teens. So the question then is, how can I give my teachers a useful way of analyzing a relationship with students so that they can start to build a relationship with those students that will give them more control in the classroom. And again, control not in a dictatorial way, but control in a fruitful way, where The students will follow you because they want to follow you. Here's the framework for that sort of analysis. There are two sources of authority, formal and informal. One second. So just think to yourself for a minute, or type in chat, or even say something. What do you think is a source of formal authority? Any ideas? Well, check this out. If I have a degree from Harvard, I can walk into any room and say, I have a degree from Harvard, and everyone says, wow. That's a big deal. If you have the pedigree, if you have the degree from some impressive university that everybody knows, then you have some formal authority. What else? For some, your position as a teacher. So I couldn't find this article myself, but one of my teachers told me about it. It was an article talking about which cultures have the most respect for teachers. And Russia was actually up there. I think China was number one now. And some students come into the classroom and you're the teacher. You have the answers and I respect you immediately. Other sources of formal authority. Age. Age is a big deal. So if I have a new teacher who is 55, 60 years old and looks 55 or 60 years old, like if I have a teacher coming from Canada, he's got a white beard, glasses, kind of salt and pepper hair, that teacher will have a lot of authority coming into the classroom with whoever is there. The parents look at that teacher and say, wow, that guy knows what's up. But here's the thing, what if he started working a month ago? Doesn't matter. He still has a lot of authority because of his age. Another source of formal authority is where you're from. So I have authority with some people just because I'm from the US. Just because I'm from the US. And that's actually a big difficulty with working with a lot of people from countries outside of Russia, the UK, and the US, because, I mean, honestly, they don't have to be real teachers a lot of the time. And they can kind of skate through different jobs. They don't have to be serious about it because they have so much authority just because of where they're from. They're not good teachers. They're not professionals, but they are able to find jobs easily just because of where they're from. Because in the eyes of the students, they have formal authority. At least in the beginning. Because over time, if you damage that relationship, it goes beyond the point of no return. It goes past the point of no return, and the class falls apart. The teacher has no control over the students. That teacher that I told you about was from the US. And I won't tell you what city she's from, because you might be able to find out. But she's a great person, and she was from a big city. I'm from a small city in the US. No one cares about my city. But I thought that she would have more control over the classroom because she'd have more formal authority because she's from a city that people actually know. But over time, the authority went down and she couldn't get it back at that point. Now, when I train my teachers, I say you need to be very aware. You need to be very aware of the amount of authority you have when you come into the classroom. I am very aware that I will look young for my age, usually. I mean, it's the same. I look exactly the same as my dad when he was my age, and I will always look young. Now, maybe when I'm older, it'll be a blessing. Now it's more of a curse. So when we opened my school, it's people come in and they look at me like, who is this 16-year-old trying to sell us English lessons? I understand that. I understand that. And I have to understand that coming into the room, because understanding that means that I have to do other things to support my authority. Sure, I have formal authority because of my background, and now because my school has a good reputation, that also contributes to my formal authority. But you should understand where your advantages lie, where your disadvantages lie, because you need to fight against that to maintain your authority. And that's where informal authority comes in. Now, what you'll notice about formal authority is that you have little to no control over it. I'm not going to get plastic surgery to look older so that my students respect me more when I walk in the room, or that parents respect me more when I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning. Or when I gave a speech. When I gave a speech, first impression is like, who is this kid? Fine, that's fine with me, because I know that makes me say, okay, I have to find something else that supports my authority. So check it out. Informal authority. How can you build that? Praise. Something basic, remembering students' names. You remember students' names? You're good. You remember what they tell you. When they do an activity, you ask about it so that they did it for a reason. When you put a challenge in front of them, they overcome it, and then you praise them for overcoming it, and they feel the growth. That's how it works. You dress more nice. You dress nicer. That's one of the reasons I dress more formally, because I understand that I look young. Totally fine. That is a way to strengthen your informal authority with your students. Look organized. Look confident. If you look nervous in front of your students, if you're looking small all the time, if you ever see someone step on stage who's nervous, you're probably just watching any speech. In my opinion, you should be nervous going on stage. But don't look nervous. You have to be conscious of how you stand. And what I tell teachers is when they're nervous, spread out. Spread out and slow down. Don't sit like this, like I had a teacher, I hope you can see me on this. I had a teacher who stood at the board like this. Stood at the board like this. And I told him, you don't look like you know what you're talking about. You have a good presentation, but it doesn't look like it's good. I don't trust that what you're telling me is actually something real. So I say, okay, spread out, stand like this. That makes a difference. What else? Okay, this is something I just started doing. I read a book on body language and what shows confidence to students. So look at my hands. What is the best way for me to put my hands in my pockets? Option 1, option 2, or option 3. What is the most confident looking way to stand? What do you think? We'll go through them again. Option 1, option 2, and option 3. Option 3. How you even hold your hands in your pockets makes a subconscious impact on your students and how they see you. Being aware of what formal authority you come into the classroom with helps you understand what sort of informal authority you need to build in order to strengthen your relationship with your students. If you work at a big chain that everybody knows, you're at an advantage. You're at an advantage. If you work at a small school that just opened up, you don't have that same advantage because you don't have formal authority. Now, over time, what happens? You build informal authority, and as a result, your formal authority gets stronger because your reputation grows, and it builds on itself. So we've been open for years now, so English Connection has. Now, teachers coming in to their first lesson at English Connection have more formal authority than teachers did 3, 4, 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago, because our reputation grows over time. That's how it works. So build a relationship of authority with your students. That means fairness, it means consistency, and it means providing results. So we've got two things so far for classroom management. Establishing expectations. Be clear about those. How you establish those expectations will be different depending on the age of your students. Then we have establish authority with your students in the context of their age. Teens won't respect formal authority most of the time. So be sure to strengthen that informal authority with them. Remember their names, stereotype, and create these sort of inside jokes that build a relationship that is surface level but is productive. And then finally, I want to establish a relationship of, a general atmosphere of positivity. General atmosphere of positivity. Why? I'm going to draw on the board for this. I'm going to see if you can actually see it. I got this computer open right here. I'll draw big. All right, check it out. Right here is the general range that I want to have in my classroom in terms of the atmosphere. Do I want it incredibly positive, neutral, or negative or angry? Now, I like to tell a story in this case. Think about two parents. You have two parents. One yells all the time. That parent yells all the time. It's just shouting, 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 always angry about everything. How do the kids react when that parent gets angry and shouts again? Here they go again. Here they go again, whatever. And they just tune it out. They don't have to listen. But what about the other parent? The other parent is quiet. The other parent is quiet, and then when they get angry, what happens? Whoa! The kids pay attention. There is a value in providing contrast for your students. So when I have an atmosphere that's generally positive, and something goes wrong, I go to negative for a little while, then I bounce back up to positive. So it's generally positive, I go to negative, then I go back up to positive. This works. This works because it's kind of like a splash of cold water in the face for the students, and it allows me to get their attention, and it allows me to reestablish expectations so that we understand each other. There are a lot of reasons why that works, but I'll just tell you stories. This happened twice with teenagers. One group was younger teenagers, the other group was a little older teenagers. The first group was very high level. They were very high level, very impressive, but things were getting out of hand. Things were getting where they were speaking out of turn, they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. So here's my reaction. I said, okay, everybody, sit down, sit down. All right, stop. You know what? I want to have fun. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy lessons. You know what we can do? We can go through every activity in the book one by one. I don't want to do that. That's boring. I take time to prepare these lessons and bring in these materials so that I can have a good time and so that you can have a good time. But you have to be good, all right? Do what you're supposed to do. All right, and just go back to it. So a short period of negativity that gets their attention, and then back to positivity and move on. This is a non-judgmental way of providing discipline. It's not you're bad because you are a bad person. That's not going to be good for your authority if they feel that. If they feel dislike or judgment in any sort of meeting out of discipline, then it's not going to help your authority. So it should be fair, and it's fair when it's in the context of your expectations. Another situation was almost the exact same thing. I had an activity at a camp, a much more loose situation. The kids are having fun doing it, but it's getting too wild. They're elementary level students. They're talking all at the same time. It's a mess. Same exact thing. Everybody sit down, sit down. All right. And I give almost the same speech, lower level for the lower level students. but they get it. If I can use that contrast to get their attention, splash that cold water in their face, then, okay, then we're back. We're back where I have control in the classroom. I reestablish expectations, and it doesn't damage my authority because it's fair. My authority means that I discipline based on already established expectations. If I get angry and it doesn't seem fair from the student's perspective, or if someone gets in trouble for something that isn't fair, that damages authority. So how can I control a class and make it so that I have tools at my disposal? Beginning of the year, I want to establish clear expectations, number one. I want to establish and start to build a relationship of authority. And then 3, general atmosphere of positivity. Not just because it's a positive learning environment, but because you can actually use that to gain attention from your students. So that's the general sort of generally applicable principles that you can use and with any age, any level. And that's the kind of way I approach teacher training in general. When it comes to teachers that I work with, any sort of, you talk with Antoine about P1, P2, P3. The idea is that I want to look for principles that are applicable to many different levels so that teachers can make the same right decision in the moment. When we first started English Connection, and I think a little bit before that too, when I was working with teachers as a methodologist at another school in St. Petersburg, I started collecting difficulties in the classroom. I started collecting them, and I had a document called Troubleshooting, and I would collect the problem. We would discuss it in a meeting. Then we would come up with solutions. We'd talk about what worked. So I did that for a while, and then I stopped. Why? Well, first of all, how long is that document going to be? How many pages? Like 400? How many possible problems are there in the classroom? Now, that's first. Second, who's going to read it? Who's going to read a 400-page book on potential problems? Not everybody. Not everybody. I mean, maybe you would. I mean, if you're here right now, if you're listening to this, you're obviously interested in development. But even then, we got a third point. How useful of a reference is that? So if I have a problem in class, what am I going to say? Okay, I got this. Page 213. Yes. No. Page 136. I can't believe it. And then you respond? No. It's not a useful reference. I want to give guidelines that allow the teacher to make right decisions at the right moment. So putting together lessons based on P1, P2, P3 production, build, and difficulty, giving explanations that have the core meaning of the grammar in a way that is clear to the student, that is a guideline that allows the teacher to adapt based on the situation. When I talk about classroom management discipline, establishing expectations, establishing a relationship of authority, and understanding your own level of authority coming in, and then building an atmosphere of positivity, of general positivity, what that does is allow for analysis and reaction on the spot. That's what I find to be most useful. That's what I really like. That's what I really like. I like looking for generally applicable rules that allow teachers to be very flexible and effective. Very flexible and effective in a variety of situations. It's really challenging. That's one of the reasons I like the job, though, because it is difficult. So, if it was easy, then we probably wouldn't have a job. If it was easy to learn English, I like to look into different options out there for learning a language. I like this guy. I read his book, Pimsleur. He talks about how to learn a foreign language. He's got his own methodology. He passed away a few decades ago, I think. Then I look into polyglots because I want to know what's out there. Because if there's something better than what I do, it's my responsibility to give my students that. So I always look into that, and I look into these polyglots, and they're impressive people. I speak 16 languages, and you can learn any language in 3 months. All you have to do is go to the country for 3 months, live there, not say a word of your own language, and interact with everybody all the time. I'm like, well, I'm sure that works. I'm sure it does work, but most people won't do that, and most people can't do that for various reasons. Financial reasons, lack of confidence, worry, fear. There's a lot of reasons people won't do that. On the other, there are also students who will just take a chart and then say, oh, I get it, and start speaking. Most students will not do that. Most students cannot do that. So when I talk about these general principles, I want to be able to work with everybody, regardless of age, regardless of level of motivation. And that is the real challenge of the job. And again, that's why it's interesting, I think. That was a long answer. Does anyone have any questions about this so far? That sort of building tools for classroom management. That's really what it is. It's building tools for classroom management. Oh, let me write the third one down just in chat so you have it. So we have establish expectations, establish authority, and then a general atmosphere of positivity. There you go. So those are the 3 things that I would say in response to Yadena's question. Good question. All right. Next question. Dealing with mixed ability classrooms, with mixed level classrooms. That is a reality. That's a reality. So I don't know where you work. Maybe you have more individual students. Maybe you have students working together in a smaller group. But the reality is, in some way, people are going to be mixed abilities. They don't have all the exact same abilities. Maybe one student knows all the grammar but won't say a word. Maybe one student's great at writing and speaking, but is completely careless when it comes to basic activities that they'll need to do for an exam, for YEGE, for example. So on some level, every lesson will be mixed ability, will be mixed level. How do we deal with it then? I'm looking for a general guideline here, but let's talk about this background a little bit more. What happens? We have students, and there's a difference in the beginning of the year. The danger is that over the course of the year, that difference grows. Now, the weak students will get stronger, but the stronger students will get stronger faster. And then at the end of the year, it's way worse. And if you might work at a place where it's commercially the only thing that they can do is to move that weak student to the next level. And then you're stuck with, whoa, a huge gap already in the beginning, and it's the same sort of problem. That gap grows even more, and you're dealing with a situation where you have to say, okay, who am I going to make unhappy today? My weak students or my strong students? And teaching to the middle too often means that your strong students are bored, and your weak students can't do it. They just can't do it if you teach to the middle. So that's the danger. That's the danger. It can be too difficult for the weak students. It can be too easy for the strong students and uninteresting. Now, I'm going to come at this from the idea that you know what P2s are. And P2s are a lifesaver. P2s, automate activities, are a lifesaver in this case. Because what happens? Strong students, they're engaged, they're interested. If you set a goal for strong students, it can be a personalized goal. If my strong student does something in 20 seconds, I can say, do it in 14. And that's a challenge. They're still interested, they're still engaged, and they're still improving because their instincts are still growing. My weak students will get like a minute and 40 seconds. And I'll say, okay, do it in 56 seconds. And they are able to grow as well. And they're going to see big growth. And what this does is concentrate them on those forms while still engaging those strong students, still engaging the strong students. So it has to be possible for weak students, but still engaging for strong students. Now, what does that mean? When I choose my P2 activities, I am going to make sure there's a build. If my strong students can go from filling in the blanks to a fast race game, my weak students cannot. So first I'll do the P2 activity slowly, and then I'll challenge them. Then I'll challenge them so that they have more of an opportunity to see it beforehand. And what I love about this, if you have a good explanation and the topic is new for everybody. So let's say, for example, my students have never done second conditional. They've never done second conditional, and it's new for absolutely everyone in the classroom. My weak students can beat my strong students on a P2 activity. They can. Because it's new for everybody. But you might have to review more with those weak students on other topics. New topics, they're going to move forward together. Other topics, you're probably going to need to review more with those weak students. But if you have a P2 in there that builds slowly and builds difficulty, it provides value to the strong students because they have a challenge, they have a goal to reach for. And the weak students, it provides that really concentrated effort where they focus on it and they really improve. So competition with the slow build is the way to go about it. Now, another message that I like to talk about, this is one of those things. Value. I wrote it in chat. Value. My students need to understand that there is value in what I'm giving them. If you are teaching something that your strong students are arrogant about, they think, oh, I know this. This is not, why am I here? I'm too good for this. What's your response? What do you think? You have to make sure they understand they have weaknesses. If your strong students think that they're too cool for school, that they're too good for this, you have to make them understand they're not good enough yet. There are different ways of doing that. This year in my school, we're experimenting with sort of progress sheets where we tell the students exactly where their weaknesses lie for every single topic and show areas for growth. Because if my strong students make a mistake on a fill-in-the-blank activity, they might just say, I know it though. They might be arrogant, they might not pay as much attention because they think they're that good. But I want to make clear that they have weaknesses so there's value in the activity. That goes for writing, speaking, and P1 activities. So P1, P3, and production activities. For P2 activities, they have value in the challenge. So you have to point out weaknesses for your strong students so that there's value in them paying attention. And for your weak students, you show growth. You show growth. You tell them, hey, much better. You did 53 seconds. You started at 1 minute, 40 seconds. Much better. What were you doing the first time? You've got this. You show growth and you do it in a meaningful way, which goes back to what we talked about before, authority. If you show results and give your students praise that means something to your students, it builds your authority. And it works. It works. So that your classroom, regardless of how mixed level it is, everyone moves forward. And that gap doesn't grow. It doesn't grow. And you give the opportunity for the weak students to catch up. Because I don't like as well, I also don't like when people only teach to the weak students because there's no opportunity to be great. There's no opportunity to be great and grow for the strong students. So that's how I see it. That's how I see it. It's challenge, it's understanding of weakness for the strong students, but still making it possible for the weak students. All right, I have 2 more minutes and just one last question from Elena. Features, cool traditions in your class. I'm not exactly sure what she meant by this. Because I in terms of features, little traditions, I have more of a just structured approach that has a lot of different features. A lot of different features. We have stickers that we give out for homework. If students, if kids do homework for the whole week, they get a sticker. The stickers are on their books. They compare how many stickers they have with each other. That we have those 5 rules we talked about, power teaching. And this year, we're trying something new. So if you have students who would be interested in this, please contact me, tell Antoine. What I want to start doing is providing a sort of pen pal program for teachers who are involved with resource education, for schools who are involved with resource education. I'm excited by this because it could give students more value in their learning of English. They're actually communicating with somebody. So the idea is to have it so that students write a postcard and we check the postcard because, you know, they're kids, there's liability, everything like that. And then we send the postcard to some other student somewhere in Russia. And we have this whole process where the students feel the use of the language much more readily. So that's a new feature that I'd like to put into place this year. So far, my students, so we're starting our groups next week. And so far, we have 4 letters that I need to find students to respond to. If you're interested in being part of that, let me know. Because I think that could be a really valuable tool for student motivation. And it's an opportunity for them to use English in a different way, not just textbooks and something that it needs to feel real for them. And it's sometimes hard to make that happen. I think this is a good opportunity to do that. So those were the questions I had this week. I hope you liked it. I like talking about this stuff. I mean, I'm tired and hungry, but when I'm in it, I'm in it. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope my stories hit home. All true stories. And that's how I approach the questions asked this week. And for the future, you can ask questions that are more general, more specific. I love this challenge. I love this challenge because the more exposure that I have to different situations, difficulties in other classrooms all around, the better I can do at trainings, at making materials, because that's the point. I want something that can reach more people, which means that I need to understand the situation more and more. I hope that what I talked about today is applicable to your situation. I love that stuff. I love that stuff. I like reading things and applying them. Reading, studying, applying them to classrooms, and really considering how we can work out different problems together. Oh, about the postcards. Oh, okay, Natalia. Postcards, it's just write me about it. If you write me about it or write Antoine about it, we will get in touch on that. No problem. We'll get in touch on the postcards and I'll explain it to you. I want to have kind of students from all over Russia writing to each other in English as a sort of pen pal program where they write each other and get extra practice. So if that's unclear, I'll explain it in an email, no problem. I might be a little bit delirious at this point. I should have brought a snack to work and I forgot. So thanks a lot, guys. That was fun for me. Keep questions coming. Thank you to Yelena for those questions. And honestly, it can be something that happened last week. It can be something that happens all the time. It can be some sort of something that you do great that is, that you want to understand why it works. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. We can talk about it during this too. It can be more of a discussion as well. I'm happy to make it that way. This was fun for me. Thanks for coming. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Great to see you all here, and happy to answer any questions. Happy to answer any questions. Just send them. Send them. Antoine gets a whole list for me. So if you send them, I'll answer as many as I can during the time that we have, and we'll go from there. Otherwise, have an awesome weekend. Take it easy after that first week of school, and I will power through this parent meeting yesterday. I'm glad you liked it, Olga. That's really nice. Appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. And keep in touch for sure. Antoine will send out this recording too so you can review it. So, bye-bye. See you.